Tu Youyou was a malaria killer assistant because she shut down the world's largest artemisinin factory in 1997, causing the innocent deaths of 2 million African patients who could have been saved by artemisinin. Part 1. The topic of this video is to expose the truth why the African malaria deaths got out of control after 1997. According to the WHO official statistics, about 5 million of African malaria patients died between 1998 and 2008. However, about 2 million of them might have been saved from death if they had sufficient effective anti-malaria medication. The part 1 of this video talked about how Professor Wei Zhenxing from Shandong Institute of Traditional Medicine designed and built the world's largest artemisinin producing factory in 1990. The second part talked how Tu Youyou used the politics to shut down this artemisinin production factory in 1997 and caused millions of innocent African malaria patients being died because of shortage of artemisinin. Therefore, Tu Youyou became an involuntary malaria killer assistant, or similarly say, a malaria massacre maker. Because of the massacre of millions of malaria deaths, the Western scholars recognized the importance of artemisinin and planned to award the Nobel Prize to the inventor of artemisinin. However, they mistakenly picked the malaria massacre maker Tu Youyou as the winner of 2015 Nobel Prize in Medicine instead of malaria terminator Professor Wei Zhenxing because of the false information provided by Chinese Ministry of Health. In 1996, the World Health Organization designed an anti-malaria project named Defeat Malaria, whose goal was to reduce the number of global malaria deaths to the half in 12 years. There were 3 anti-malaria drugs were listed in the project. Number 1, chloroquine. Number 2, sulfadoxine pyrimethamine. Number 3, artemisinin. However, this project was failed completely, particularly in Africa. Millions of African patients lost their lives. From WHO official website, we can get the statistics on malaria deaths in Africa from 1997 to 2008. Then we can draw the following death curve by using those numbers. We can see 2 significant features from this death curve. Number 1, the death tolls increased rapidly from 1997 to 2004. The number of deaths in 2004 was 19% more than in 1997. The annual death increasing rate was about 2.7%. That means lost control. Number 2, after 2004, the death tolls stopped increasing, although the death number were not reducing yet, but were kept stable around 832,000. That means got control. The malaria deaths in Africa got out of control was because the World Health Organization's artemisinin major supply, Wulingshan Pharmaceutical Factory, was forced to shut down in 1997 by Tu Youyou's dirty politics operation. Tu Youyou's dirty operation obtained the strong support from the Chinese Ministry of Health and former Premier Li Peng, but was strongly opposed by the former military agency 523 Project Office and almost all of 523 Project scientists. Tu Youyou said in her Nobel Prize speech that her team obtained Artemisinin crystal in November 1972 and the new drug certificate in 1986. Please watch.
1972年11月，就从这个中心部位中成功的分离得到抗疟有效代替化合物的基金，就是后来命名为青蒿素的基金。1986年，青蒿素获得了卫生部新药证书。
The 523 Project Office required that any anti-malaria drug must have at least 1,000 successful clinical trials of falciparum malaria cases to prove it. However, in the following year, 1973, Tu Youyou's team did not have any successful clinical trial. In 1974, the 523 Project Office gave Tu Youyou's team another chance of clinical trial to prove her crystal. But in September, Tu Youyou decided to withdraw from clinical trials. Because of without successful clinical trials, Tu Youyou's crystal was never identified as an effective anti-malaria drug and never named as Artemisinin by 523 Project Office. The evidence of Tu Youyou's crystal failed in 1973 clinical trial was edited on page 27 of the booklet Qinghao Anti-Malaria Research, which was sent to Nobel Prize Museum in Stockholm by Tu Youyou in October 2015 as an exhibition document. The following is a brief translation of page 27 about Tu Youyou's 1973 clinical trial result. Number 1. 3 Vivax malaria cases were effective after treatment. Number 2. 1 falciparum malaria case was temporarily effective, but the parasites came back in day 6. Number 3. 2 falciparum cases were not effective at all. Number 4. 2 falciparum cases were terminated giving medicine because of drug cardiotoxicity. Number 5. The remaining cases were stopped for clinical trial by the hospital because worried about the drug toxicity. Therefore, Tu Youyou's 1973 clinical trial was completely failed. Also, page 27 shows that Tu Youyou's team did not conduct a clinical trial in 1974. Actually, this booklet does not belong to Tu Youyou. It was edited by Tu Youyou's boss, Deputy Director Zhang Guozheng. That was why the booklet recorded Tu Youyou's failed 1973 clinical trial in detail. Tu Youyou took Mr. Zhang's book to pretend as hers because she did not have anything published in this period of time. However, Tu Youyou would not worry about that page 27 having her failed clinical trial record because he knew that the Nobel Prize Museum never let visitors read the documents in the exhibition showcase. In 1962, Professor Gaisman published a textbook, Principles of Organic Chemistry. In this book, Dr. Gassman proposed a new technical method to isolate the crystal from composite plants. Because Dr. Gassman recorded that he used Artemisia annua as raw material, therefore we could say Dr. Gassman might be the first person in the world to discover artemisinin in the 1950s, although he did not realize the crystal was a new anti-malaria drug. In April 1973, Wei Zhenxing from Yunnan Institute of Material Medical used Gassman's method to obtain the crystal from plant Artemisia annua. She named the crystal to be Huanghao. Then Wei Zhenxing tried to search the plant Artemisia annua that has higher anti-malaria content by using the Gassman method. Finally, she found that Yuyan's Artemisia annua is the best, whose anti-malaria content is 10 times that from other places. Based on such a high anti-malaria content and the saturation theory, Wei Zhenxing's teammate, Mr. Zhang, invented the gasoline solvent method to produce Huanghao, which laid the foundation for the artemisinin industrial production later. In the end of 1974, Guangzhou and Yunnan teams together carried out clinical trials in Yunnan province to treat 18 malaria patients by using crystal Huanghao. The clinical trials obtained the hugest success. Two teams together wrote the following report: Summary on treating 18 malaria cases by using Huanghao, which said that the preliminary results proved Huanghao killed malaria parasites faster than chloroquine. Huanghao was named to be artemisinin later because it had more than 4,000 successful clinical trials in the next 3 years. In November 1973, Professor Wei Zhenxing from Shandong Institute of Traditional Medicine isolated the crystal from Artemisia annua by using acetone soaking and silicone gel chromatography method. He named the crystal to be Huanghao. In 1974, Professor Wei conducted a clinical trial in Shandong province to treat 19 Vivax malaria patients by using Huanghao. All patients were successfully cured. Although there was no falciparum malaria case in Professor Wei's clinical trial, however, the most fortunately reported scientists believed that Huanghao was artemisinin too. In 1979, in order to prevent the possible dispute over who invented the anti-malaria new drug artemisinin, after discussion with the Ministry of Health, 523 Project Office selected 6 units from more than 50 anti-malaria research teams as the major contributors for the discovery of new drug artemisinin, and awarded them the invention certificate. The invention certificate was issued by China Science and Technology Commission. Tu Youyou's unit was listed as the first winner. However, Tu Youyou's crystal was cardiotoxic and cannot be used for medical purpose at all. Although Yunnan team's crystal Huanghao had performed more than 4,000 successful clinical trials, and its gasoline solvent method was the foundation of artemisinin industrial production. but Renan's unit only listed as the third winner. Therefore, the ranking in the certificate was the political ranking, not the contribution ranking. On October 15, 1979, the Chinese main official newspaper Renmin Ribao announced that Artemisinin was invented by 6 units. In October 1981, the fourth WHO conference on chemotherapy for malaria was held at Beijing. The main topic of this conference was to discuss artemisinin and its derivatives. The chairman of the conference, Dr. Anand, who was a malaria expert from WHO, praised the discovery of artemisinin. He said, "The discovery of artemisinin is very important because the current conventional anti-malaria drugs, such as chloroquine, may gradually become ineffective due to drug resistance in malaria parasites." Dr. Anand even predicted the discovery of artemisinin has the potential to win a Nobel Prize. During the conference, the WHO and the Chinese Ministry of Health reached a long-term cooperation. WHO hopes that China could provide artemisinin and its derivatives to help the global fight against malaria. Zhou Keding, as the Chinese co-chairman of the conference, said that China wishes WHO could register artemisinin and its derivatives. WHO said that the registered drug must be past the GMT production inspection. In September 1982, U.S. FDA official Dr. Teslev inspected 2 artemisinin production lines built in Kunming and Guilin pharmaceutical factories. However, both of them failed to meet the GMT production standard. Due to the failed inspections, Mr. Zhou thought it was necessary to build a brand new artemisinin production factory to support WHO. After 2 years investigation, in 1984, Mr. Zhou Keding, who was a former leader of 523 Project and then the director of Artemisinin Research and Development Steering Committee, proposed to China Ministry of Health for building a brand new artemisinin production factory in Youyang County of Sichuan Province to support the foreign demand for artemisinin. Youyang was chosen as the location because this region was the origin of high-quality Artemisia annua, which could reduce the huge transportation cost of raw material. However, the Ministry of Health did not support Mr. Zhou's proposal for building a new artemisinin production factory because they believed that China had already eliminated malaria disease with the exception of some small regions. The existing 2 artemisinin production lines built in Kunming and Guilin pharmaceutical factories were sufficient to handle the few malaria cases in China. Moreover, the China Ministry of Health said that to meet the global anti-malaria demand was not our top priority. But Mr. Zhou would not give up his desire for building such important artemisinin production factory. Through Mr. Zhou's lobby, in July 1986, based on the financial guarantee of 3 Gorges Consortium, Sichuan Minority Poverty Alleviation Foundation loaned 1.25 million renminbi to Youyang County as a start-up fund for building a new artemisinin production factory. Also through Mr. Zhou's lobby, In November 1986, the Sichuan Provincial Medical Administration officially approved the establishment of Wulingshan Artemisinin Pharmaceutical Factory in Youyang County. In July 1986, Wulingshan Pharmaceutical Factory and Shandong Institute of Traditional Medicine signed a contract named Artemisinin API Production Technology Transfer. In the meantime, Professor Wei Zhenxing was invited to design and in charge of construction of the Artemisinin production workshop. In order to minimize the possible cross-contamination, Professor Wei completely modified the gasoline solvent method and designed the Artemisinin producing process to be fully enclosed and automatic. Professor Wei said in his China invention patent that the key to the design was how to make the crystallization uninterrupted and fast. Obviously, this is the new technology. When Professor Wei worked so hard to design the new Artemisinin factory for serving WHO, Tu Youyou tried to do the robbery. In October 1986, Tu Youyou registered the new drug Artemisinin certificate from the Ministry of Health, claiming that she was the only one who invented the Artemisinin and had 100% of intellectual property rights of Artemisinin. If comparing this certificate with the previous one issued by China Science and Technology Commission in 1979, we can see that they have the exactly same item, new drug Artemisinin. However, Tu Youyou reduced the 6 inventors to only one, which was Tu Youyou's institute. It was clear that Tu Youyou wanted to overturn the most important resolution of 523 Project Office about the intellectual property rights of Artemisinin. Why Tu Youyou dared to do so ridiculously was because that the former boss 523 Project Office dismissed in 1981 when the mission was completed. Tu Youyou's motivation was to win the possible Nobel Prize of Artemisinin. However, according to the previous Artemisinin invention certificate issued in 1979, Tu Youyou only had 1/6 chance to be the nomination in China for the possible Nobel Prize Artemisinin. Therefore, Tu Youyou desperately needed to do something that could remove other 5 inventors from the Artemisinin invention certificate. But we will prove that Tu Youyou's new drug certificate was illegal because it had a serious violation against the law. Now let's check out the law document, Measures for Approval of New Drugs, regulated by Chinese Ministry of Health on July 1st, 1985. The second article said new drugs refer to medicines that have never been produced in our country. The Artemisinin production lines were built in Kunming and Guilin Pharmaceutical in 1976. Therefore, in 1986, the anti-malaria drug Artemisinin was already produced in China for more than 10 years, at least when the American FDA official inspected those 2 production lines in 1982. The drug Artemisinin already existed in the Chinese market. Tu Youyou registered the 10-year-old drug Artemisinin as a new drug was directly violated Article 2 of the legal document, measures for approval of new drug. Therefore, Tu Youyou's 1986 new drug Artemisinin certificate was 100% illegal. Professor Wei believed that he had at least the partial intellectual property rights of artemisinin according to the artemisinin invention certificate issued in 1979. Therefore, Professor Wei did not care about Tu Youyou's 1986 new drug certificate of artemisinin and 100 intellectual property rights claiming at all. Professor Wei just continued to design and build the Wulingshan Artemisinin production factory. In January 1990, the Wulingshan Artemisinin production factory was built successfully. In June 1990, the highest Chinese Communist Party leader in Sichuan province, Tang Rudai, and the vice governor visited Wulingshan Artemisinin production factory to make congratulations. He praised that the establishment of a modern pharmaceutical factory in such remote Youyang mountainous area was really a miracle which could bring fortune to the poor minority people in Sichuan province. Because of its ingenious enclosed and automatic design, all possible cross-contaminations were eliminated. Therefore, Wulingshan factory quickly passed the Chinese GMP standard, which means its artemisinin quality was excellent. Moreover, its annual artemisinin production output quickly surpassed 1,000 kilograms in 1992, which was more than total sum of the outputs from all other artemisinin producing factories. In addition, the high efficient production greatly reduced the cost and price of artemisinin. Therefore, Kunming Pharmaceutical Factory decided to close its own production line and purchase artemisinin from Wulingshan Factory for making Artemisa. In 1993, Wulingshan Factory already became the world's largest artemisinin production factory. Because of its large output, high quality, and lower price, Wulingshan Factory became the first choice for foreign pharmaceutical companies to purchase artemisinin. Actually, Wulingshan Factory was responsible for about 90% of China's artemisinin export to the whole world. In 1993, Wulingshan signed a long-term artemisinin supply contract with French Romplank Pharmaceutical Company, who used Wulingshan's artemisinin as a raw material to make injective and other kinds of artemisinin anti-malaria combo drugs for WHO. In 1992, there was a rumor that the former 523 Project Office might recommend Professor Wei as a candidate for the possible Nobel Prize of Artemisinin. This was because that Professor Wei not only had discovered artemisinin in the lab, but also designed and built the world's largest artemisinin production factory to support the global fighting against malaria. Tu Youyou clearly knew that her disadvantage was that her crystal separation method could not be used for producing artemisinin industrially. So, Tu Youyou's only way to stop Professor Wei to be a Nobel Prize candidate was to smear and destroy the Wulingshan artemisinin factory. How Tu Youyou successfully destroyed The Wulingshan Artemisinin producing factory will be detailed in part 2. See you next time.